Hey everybody, welcome to more. Week 2 in our Blessed series. Super glad you're here with us. Hope you have been following along on Sundays, whether that was in a service, online in a service, or after the service on our on-demand or podcast feature. It's been a great series so far, and we've been looking at this idea of what it really means to be blessed. This past Sunday, we asked this question: how do you respond when you're blessed? What is the response we give? And we talked about 3 habits. If you were there, you remember those 3 habits were pretty simple and straightforward. One was to rejoice always. The second one was to pray constantly. And the third one was to give thanks in everything. And those habits are extremely important because as we begin to think about life, obviously the thing that kind of gunks up life for us sometimes are the circumstances that come that were least expected. Not the good circumstances, but the circumstances that sometimes still are joy and make us wonder if we really are blessed. And so taking these 3 habits and incorporating them into our life becomes extremely important. As I was thinking about that, I was thinking about our time together, whether you're doing this as a devotion or you're doing this in a small group. I was thinking about one of the Psalms that stands out that really takes these 3 ideas, these 3 habits of rejoice, pray, and give thanks, and turns them into something that we can read from a man who did that very thing. It's a prayer of Moses, and it's Psalm 90. I want to read the entirety of that psalm, and then I want to be able to just take a second in our video time to kind of sort through as you see those 3 habits kind of on display. There's a lot in the psalm, and not all of it may, as we read it, make sense to you right away. But I hope as you dig into it this week, you'll see just exactly how these habits were infused in Moses' life, and he saw the blessings that he had as he walked with the Lord. So let me read Psalm 90 for you. We'll start in verse 1. There's 17 verses, and this is his prayer. He says, "Lord, you have been our refuge in every generation. Before the mountains were born, before you gave birth to the earth and to the world, from eternity to eternity, you are God. You return mankind to the dust, saying, 'Return, descendants of Adam. For in your sight 1,000 years are like yesterday that passes by, like a few hours of the night. You end their lives, they sleep. They are like grass that grows in the morning. In the morning it sprouts and grows. By evening it withers and dries up. For we are consumed by your anger. We are terrified by your wrath. You have set our iniquities before you, our secret sins in the light of your presence. For all our days ebb away under your wrath. We end our years like a sigh. Our lives last 70 years, or if we are strong, 80 years. Even the best of them are struggle and sorrow. Indeed, they pass quickly and we fly away. Who understands the power of your anger? Your wrath matches the fear that is due you. Teach us to number our days carefully so that we may develop wisdom in our hearts. Lord, how long? Turn and have compassion on your servants. Satisfy us in the morning with your faithful love so that we may shout with joy and be glad all our days. Make us rejoice for as many days as you have humbled us, for as many years as we have seen adversity. Let your work be seen by your servants and your splendor by your children. Let the favor of the Lord our God be on us. Establish for us the work of our hands. Establish the work of our hands." As we get to verse 17, we read these words: "Let the favor of the Lord our God be on us." It seems to me that Moses understood that throughout all the courses, all the seasons of his life, that it was the favor or the blessing of God on him that he most longed for and he most wanted to remember. And as we journey through these 17 verses, there are so many wonderful examples of just those 3 things that we talked about on Sunday: rejoice, pray, give thanks. As we read through the psalm, we find these standing out. He begins by giving praise to the Lord. Lord, you have been our refuge in every generation. He would say later on in verse 15, make us rejoice for as many days as you have humbled us, for as many years as we've seen adversity. No matter our circumstances, he said, no matter the seasons of life we may be in, may we rejoice. Make us to rejoice. Don't let us forget the blessings you've given to us. And then even when the circumstances were extremely difficult, and he lays out for us in verses 3 through 12, 12, he really talks about the shortness, the brevity of life. He talks about the adversities of life, the difficult times in life. He describes our life like grass that grows. It grows up in the morning, it sprouts out, it begins to have an impact or influence, but by night it withers and dries up. He even talks about the wrath of God, being consumed by his anger, the judgment that comes on our sin. And he speaks of our sin, the iniquities that are before God, and the iniquities or the secret sins that are in the light of your presence, bringing them out. He says that our days are short, 70 years, maybe 80. And yet through it all, we find there is this thread of rejoicing, this understanding that even with all of the difficulties of life, God, you are faithful. God, you are with us. God, you have blessed us. And so as we begin to think through that, we can see him rejoicing in all things, always giving praise to God. The shortness of life, God, I praise you. The difficulties of life, God, I praise you. God, even your judgment, because you have given your favor to us, I'll praise you. We see him even in the midst of all that praying constantly. This is a prayer. Lord, you have been our refuge. He gives this understanding that he's crying out to God and speaking to God as he journeys through these different seasons of life. And then the giving thanks. He reminds us as he prays this prayer that everything that he has gained, everything that he has seen, everything that he will do, the work of his hands is because God has been faithful, because God has blessed him. It's a great example for us to see how those habits infuse our life and have an impact on how we live our life every single day. I'll have some questions to follow there in the more section for you to consider. And maybe as you journey through this, you'll begin to find ways to implement these habits in your life as you see how your response to being blessed makes a difference in how you live your life and how people see your faith. Hey, we'll see you next time for the third week in this Blessed series as we finish up the series Sunday with some great insight and some practical application for our lives. See you next week.